Domination. Nation of domination. Nation of domination. We are the nation of domination. Nation of domination.
I was telling GM how I put some emphasis on the bold outline that we have for our script.
Mo represents Times New Roman.
Size 12. 4 inch Terry. Welcome in. Welcome to the Div 4 podcast. No name yet. We're still on that hunt for new name.
Have we even implemented the new opening song?
No, we haven't. Next week. At the halfway point, we'll do that for sure. By the way, halfway point coming up this weekend. A reminder to all the teams out there: if you want to have your players eligible for playoffs, minimum 6 games. So if you have anyone that you want to play for playoffs, they have to play the rest of the season, including you, GM. Good to know that you know.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Excellent. Let's dive in. Opening drive here. Backyard Bullies game changers. The changers win 26-25 in a close one. Anton Sakis, 4 TDs, 157 yards passing. Rich Humes, 79 yards passing, 75 yards rushing, and 3 TDs. We'll go with the first question here. Have the game changers finally found their mojo on offense?
I don't know if they found their mojo. Honestly, I'm very surprised with this outcome. I'll eat my humble pie willingly. This is one that I saw the Backyard Bullies running away with. It was not the case. Game changers not only kept it competitive, but actually won. I don't think they're finding a new identity on offense. I think they're making do with what they have, and they're making do well.
As good as the Backyard Bullies can be. I mean, I've seen this team play. Good defense. Mm-hmm. Does it worry you, though, with Rich Humes being more of a runner than a passer? Because I score-kept a few of their games, and he's run for a lot of yards.
If you took Rich Humes out of this team dynamic and put him in another team to quarterback, I would say yes, absolutely. I think the way this team is built and the way this team is run is that they're very accepting of that. They run their routes to really space out the field for him to give him that option to either run or even throw on the run. I think that based on the players he has, the size he has, the speed he has, I don't think it's a problem at all.
You think it worries you, though, when we approach, if they make playoffs, if they do, that team might say, well, let's run a 4-1 on him and force him to go over top? Because, again, he's not passing for 150 yards here. He's passing for less than 80 yards.
He's got a lot of strength at the center position, which is honestly the undoing of a potential 4-1. If you can consistently get that center open in a 4-1 defense, it's going to be completions all day for you. Like I said, he has that speed as well. If they run a 4-1 and he starts making time with his legs and then throwing on the run, that's going to be disastrous. You can't hold the defense for that long. I don't think it's something that's necessarily worrisome to me.
Phil Dukovic of the Changers, pass rusher now.
Dukovic, yeah. He was put on their roster early on, and we didn't really see his presence. I think that with Justin Filto out, it was great seeing Justin Filto at the field as well. Admittedly not playing, but he was present. It was nice to see him. I think with this absence, we always say the 3 most important spots on an FPF team: quarterback, center, rusher. He brings a new dynamic to this team, and it's really welcome and helpful at a time where they're missing a lot of guys.
A lobster dinner, Longhorns. Longhorns cook up some lobster, winning 32-24. John Moody, 5 TDs, 1 INT. John Brown, 4 TDs, 1 INT. On paper, the dinner has a better roster. Surprised by the outcome.
I'm actually not surprised by the outcome. I was really thinking that this game would be one that the Longhorns would win in an upset. They have a deeper roster. They've made some key additions as well. If you bring up the Longhorns roster, you'll see it's not one that you're normally accustomed to seeing. They've made a few additions as well. Aggie Kaleidopoulos is one of them. John Moody's had a lot of weapons on this team that he can work with. They just haven't been having success up until this point. Was also interested in seeing that Glenn Cooper, KPFL alum, very, very good player. Not someone you'd think would be able to come up with those plays. You just see an older guy, an older balding guy. You think he's just another guy on the field for this team filling in. Very, very strong player. Rob Allen, back from injury as well. Honestly, probably, in my opinion, one of the best D4 players in the league who doesn't get a lot of press.
I saw him play against Playground about, I think, 3 weeks ago in Lachine Sunday Night Football.
That was a rough game.
That was a terrible game. And I was saying to myself, I'm like, Longhorns shouldn't be in Div 4 by the way they played. And it showed. I think, we spoke about this on the sideline, saying that they're a fantastic spring team, but not really a good winter team. And This could go a long way for them.
And this will go a long way for them, in my opinion. I think they've made the necessary changes in order to stay competitive in D4.
In the long run of the season here, this game will have a bigger impact on who? In terms of the win-loss, of course, we know Longhorns had this W, but do you think this loss could hurt Lobster Dinner in the long run?
Without a doubt. I think that this would have been one of the necessary games for them. You mentioned they have a great roster on paper. They've made some great off-season additions. John Brown has a lot of weapons at his disposal. Yeah. It's definitely a loss that's going to sting for them for weeks and weeks.
I think Lobster's defense is really good. Mm-hmm. I mean, I saw them play a few weeks ago in Brossard, and they were fantastic. It was boring football, but it was done. Put it that way, got it done. Brothers Sandlot Saints, Morgan Taffel.
Brothers.
Yeah, brothers. 65 yards passing, but get this: 4 carries, 103 yards rushing, and 3 TDs.
Mm-hmm. What was the score of the game?
Oh, well, the score of the game I did not put up. I'll put up the score right now. Tim Kramer, 2 TDs, 2 INTs, 116 yards. In one word, if you had to describe brothers in their victory over Sandlot Saints,
which was 32-19.
One word to describe this team. Brothers. Or brothers.
Butters.
I'm going to use a portmanteau. I'm going to use a word that compounds 2 words. I'm going to say unassuming. I'm going to think that they're a very unassuming team. You look at them, they don't seem to really have everything together.
A bit disorganized
at first glance, but they make it work, and they make it work well. And I think that that's definitely... It goes a long way in this division where they have that element of surprise.
We'll talk about Taffel a bit later on in our later segment here, but watching them play, I thought they showed a lot because, look, you're playing the Sandlot Saints that has more experience FPF-wise, right?
I would disagree with that completely.
Well, they have some guys. I mean, Mike Burr, Tim Kramer is out
Anthony
there.
Luca.
Anthony Luca. That's 3 valuable FPF guys. But you look at this team here and speak to them at half, and they go, listen, this is our first year in the league. We have no idea what's going on. I'm like, guys, you got to know the rules here.
Collectively, yes, I do agree with that. Brothers do have a weaker schedule in comparison, but Morgan Tadgeville has played in the league before. He's quarterbacked. He's subbed on the Rainmakers. Eric Raps has played in the league before. So I think that they have enough of a core to really do well. Dan Adler, if it's the same Dan Adler of the Rainmakers, it's honestly the depth in this team. It's not. I still think that the depth of the team is enough to keep them going.
Tim Kramer, what can you see from him now as a quarterback? Is he improving or regressing?
I don't think he's regressing at all. I watched his first game against Les Africains, which was admittedly a forgettable one, but he's taken everything. He's starting to analyze the strengths and the weaknesses of his team, and he's really playing up to that.
I think he's improving gradually here. What he will have to build upon from watching from the sidelines is his play calling, different plays.
Yes.
There goes our Jackets. But I think there's plays that he does really well. Wheel routes he does really well, but I think he's got to develop having the confidence throwing the ball in traffic.
Especially since it is his first season.
Exactly. So I think he's there. Saints defense. They got guys. Luca is the linchpin to the safety position. Kramer can play defense as well. Should they alter or do something?
I like how you say Kramer can play defense as if he's just a viable option and not a D1 defender who's really,
he can play
really
defense
good.
as well. I'm just listing some of the key guys.
Yeah.
But what can they do to tinker their defense right now moving forward?
I think the team right now, either on days off or maybe just have another practice a week, or aside from FPF games, have an opportunity to meet all together where they can iron out some of the kinks and really do well. Because up until this point, you'd think that where they get rid of their mistakes, as you see, it's at the field, and then they start again from scratch the next week. Whereas if you give them a core to build on, it'll be easier for them.
Only 1 INT so far as a team, so we'll have to build upon that moving forward. Come up next here on our no-name show yet, we'll have a new name next week.
Nation of Domination.
We'll change that next week, Eagle.
You're so fired.
Anyway, coming up next, we'll talk about the most dominant quarterback in Div 4 at the almost midway point of the year. Who does GM like and dislike? Stay tuned here on the No Name Show with GM
Nation of Domination.
Mocon. Stay tuned.
Brought to you by the English Montreal School Board's DEAL program. Distance education for all learners will allow you to obtain your high school diploma or prerequisites for CEGEP or vocational studies from the comfort of your own home. It's never too late to go back to school. Learn anywhere at your own pace and get your diploma. Call 514-788-5937 for information or visit www.deal.ca. distanted.ca for more details.
Kane is in the building.
You can follow us on Twitter at GMCole44.
At GMCole44, yeah.
At GMCole44 and MoCon19. These are unofficial FPF Twitter handles. We don't abide by the FPF rules.
We represent our FPF numbers at the same time.
That is correct. So there you go.
At Eagle FPF, if you tweet us at Eagle FPF, it's most likely to be read on the show, provided it's in a coherent sentence and FPF related.
At Eagle FPF, for those who want to tweet at Eagle. It is now time to talk about the most dominant quarterback in Div 4. I've listed 4 guys. Yes, you are.
We're being told to plug the www.theunclemikeshow.com.
Oh, yes.
Our gracious hosts here in the studio, Coast to Coast Studios.
Coast to Coast Studios in North Central Eastern downtown Laval.
We should really get some professional radio hosts in here.
We should. Let's dive into the most dominant quarterback talk here. I've listed 4 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Terrence Morsink from your team, Crisp. Dan Lazara. He's put up some huge numbers.
Yeah.
Shea Harbor. Sammy Fetter. Or Feeder.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go through these guys, and then we'll dive into your list if you have any guys you want to add to this quartet of quarterbacks. Terrence Morsink, system QB, because it seems like every ball he throws up in the air, it's a touchdown.
Isn't that the actual opposite of a system QB?
No, a system QB finds the right player, right?
Yeah, he finds the right player, but usually when you think of a system player, it's someone who falls within, really excels at the dynamic. Unless you're saying that Crisp's team
Marcus
dynamic
Mariota
is...
throws 20 times a game, and he has like 18 touchdowns.
If you're saying that Crisp dynamic is to air it out and score touchdowns, then yes, absolutely. It's definitely he's definitely a system.
Well, 7-14 week 3 against BMS Goat, 6 fast guys plus Ryan. He had 35 pass attempts, his highest of the season here. But when you look at him right now, and objectively speaking here, I think he has the talent to really excel. Obviously, the talent he has to work with was Liam Mahoney, Scott Moranovic to name. That's fantastic receivers to catch the ball.
Yeah.
So I think GM as well. GM's like the solid Ken Dilgler of the offense. When I look at this offense,
Derek Fontana as well.
Derek Fontana, we had some clutch.
Broke the ankles of a 69ers defender.
Yeah,
last
1
week.
catch, 40 yards, 1 TD. I just think that he has that ability to really maybe separate himself from the rest of the pack if he continues to put up numbers like he has so far. Thoughts?
We do have a tweet in as well, and I really like that Simon Dagenet brought this one in as well. We'll touch on it later. Talking about Terrence Morsink right now, without tooting my own horn because it is my team, this is a team that was built specifically for Terrence Morsink to excel around. So is he a system quarterback? He's a system quarterback within this dynamic right now. You see in seasons past, they played in Div D, they played in Div 4 where they had their share of struggles. Ever since losing guys and dropping down from the former Afternoon Delight, knockaround guys in Div 3, they haven't really been the same team. I think this is a way for Terrence to really excel in the division and bring back a lot of his former gusto.
Dan Lazara reminds me of a quarterback from the Texas Tech system that puts up numbers. But
Yeah,
they always
absolutely.
lose.
He's definitely the
He's a
purest
stats guy.
of the 4 that
Yeah.
you've named, not
Yeah.
naming everyone else. He's definitely the purest quarterback of the 4 in the division
And a
right
deep
now.
baritone voice with his cadence.
Please,
do.
no.
Hey,
That's something that doesn't even deserve recognition
20
right now.
TDs so far.
I love the player. I just think the cadence is a little bit obnoxious. He's definitely a very, very strong passer. He has that experience going up against the Division 3 defenses, which makes the step down in Division 4 palatable. It makes the defenses a little bit easier to read. So I think even if BMS Goats don't make it very far, he's definitely a very, very strong player, despite the fact that he doesn't have as much depth at the receiver position.
Well, as Eagle made the point before, his receivers aren't that great. He's averaging almost 1 TD for every 5 pass attempts, which is remarkable in this league. I just think that there might be too much on him to do because we saw with Sea Assassins last year, they relied on his arm to win so many games. They did up until that last
Is that
game.
a problem, though? You have a player
But you need a defense to win,
He plays
too.
for the Champlain Cavaliers. He's one of their flagship players. This is a quarterback-first league as well, where if you don't have a solid quarterback, you're not going to do well.
I don't know about
You can attest to that firsthand. I can attest to that firsthand.
Kevin Wyeth really wasn't anyone until I came on board.
You mean he was somebody until you destroyed
I don't know. Easy there, Terry Tam. Prep for your show. Shea Harbor, 69ers. I think teams are figuring him out. Doesn't throw a great ball, and it showed against your team on Tuesday. It was. I just think that as great as the 69ers are with their roster and depth that they have, he's either hot or super cold, and it showed this week.
And that's not necessarily a problem if you can figure out what the difference is and how to channel that. I think that they're a very, very good team. There's a lot of depth. There's a lot of athleticism. If they can focus more on what they excel at, they really throw defenses for a loop early on. So I think that if they can continue that, really throwing a lot of wrenches in the gears, they make a lot of broken plays work, and that's what this team excels at. So I think that this is definitely something that they need to consider and build plays around.
They have players on that team. They really do have.
Dean
some
Demetriou.
He's the star player of that roster. But I just think that after seeing how they played against you guys in particular, I mean, it kind of worries me a bit moving forward if Harbor can be that guy come weeks 9, 10, and maybe into the playoffs where the games are going to be a lot tighter and margin of error is going to be so small. You can't have these type of errors that he had against you guys.
Fair.
Sammy Feeder, Coyotes. I think he's too dependent on one guy.
Absolutely.
But he has
without
talent
giving
to
a
work
lot
with.
away, I mean, even being a player in this division, having Coyotes on the crisp roster, I can tell you that I very much like a lot of teams will have a game plan to neutralize his passing, to neutralize the players in particular that he tends to favor, and to really force him outside his comfort zone. I think for him to make the step from good to elite quarterback in this division, he needs to make use of everyone on his
And
team.
make everyone else better.
Yes.
We can include, of course, from Simon Dagenet.
Fred Vien, who is absolutely deserving.
Vien.
If you bring up the stats for Division 4, the QBs with a lot of passing TDs, I think it's a little bit skewed because of the fact that Dan Lazara has played an extra game.
That's right.
Terrence Morsink has played an extra
Because
game.
of the bye weeks
So
going for
I
some
think
teams,
that
yeah.
does. But if you look at the stats for Division 4, looking at the top passing QBs.
All right, Geratron 3000.
Yeah, Nigeria 3000. Right now, Gabriel Cote, someone who's missing from this list. Alexis Gaumont, I don't know if I would include him as well. Gabriel Cote, I would definitely include him as well.
Frank K's off to a little bit of a rough start. He had a great start to the year, but he's now not played as well.
I mentioned in our joint article, Simon Dagenet and I, of which there will be another one coming out this weekend. I mentioned that Gabriel Cote will be the best quarterback in Div 4 to not win the Quarterback of the Year award.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of really, really strong players on this list as well. We have Jake Applebaum for Recipe of Disaster, who might even supersede
Joey Taylor,
Sammy Feeder, in my opinion. Joey Taylor, who's not your prototypical quarterback, but
gets it done,
manages
though.
to make it work. You can say what you want about his passing style, but at the end of the day, he might put up more touchdowns than you do.
Sean McGrath had a tough game against punt returners.
I think they took punt returners way too lightly.
And they took it to them. Let's put it that way. Well, look, out of those quarterbacks we've listed right now, is there a clear-cut guy that you think is the best out of the bunch we've gone through right now?
Of the guys we've gone through, if there's a clear-cut one, it would be, like I said, the most prototypical passer is Dan Lazara, so he would be my first choice in the matter. I still think that we're in for a lot of weeks of football, though, and right now it's easy to side with Lazara or Morsink because they do have the edge having one extra game played.
Next week, we'll have the mid-season GM Awards. Maybe Dan Lazaro will be one of his award winners. Find out next week. Come up next, we'll talk about the Hall of Fame inductees. Well, there aren't any from Div 4, but we'll talk about who could be on the list next year, as this list will definitely be a lot more inclusive of guys in the lower ranks. Stay tuned here on the No Name podcast called the Nation of Domination
Jesus Christ.
with GM, Mocon, Eagle, Terry Tam, who's warming up in the bullpen at Coast to Coast Studios in North Central East from downtown Laval. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Calling the Audible has been brought to you by the English Montreal School Board's DEAL program. Distance education for all learners will allow you to obtain your high school diploma or prerequisites for SAGEP or vocational studies from the comfort of your own home. It's never too late to go back to school. Learn anywhere at your own pace and get your diploma. Call 514-788-5937 for information or visit www.distanted.ca for more details. Calling the Audible has been brought to you by
Yes, we own.
Okay, Simon Dasher, let's clear something up here on the Div 4 No Name podcast called Nation Domination. We were just listing quarterbacks. This wasn't a top 4, top 5, but we did include Fred Vien afterwards.
And Mo actually meant to address that to Ryan Phillips, who was actually the
Oh. Anyway, whoever.
Marc-Antoine Vien, who has his brother's back as well.
Yeah, of course. Throw in the sidelines next time, guys. They know why. They know why. Welcome back to the No Name podcast called Nation Domination.
Domination.
GM Cole 44, Eagle FPF. Don't forget to tweet at Eagle FPF and at MoCon19. Terry Tam in the bullpen. Get ready for You'll Never Walk Alone coming up very shortly here at Coast to Coast Studios.
Stupid Liverpool fans.
Okay, all right, they're Man U fan. Yeah, a big win over Bolton, by the way. Div 4 Hall of Fame. Of course, we have our list of guys. Once again, no one from the lower ranks in this Hall of Fame class. I think next year the list will grow even more. Who, from your eyes, you think has a good chance to be a part of this 2016 class next February?
I think of players right now who definitely deserve an inclusion who play in Division 4 currently, despite playing higher divisions or not. I think that my standout right now would be Vinny Golano. Has been very dominant, has been to the finals many times, played on a lot of very, very strong teams.
Championship teams, need I say?
Championship teams. A player I currently play with, Scott Moranowitz, has 2 championships currently at the quarterback position. Very, very dominant player as well. Has been to the Div 2 finals. Other than that, at first glance, there's a lot of real depth in the division. There's a lot of players. Gordon Hogan on Marco in the middle. Someone who hasn't really challenged himself to the upper divisions, but has been dominant in the lower ones as well. Give a couple players some time. Kevin Lubin on the A squad.
I think he'll get in at some point, yeah. But here's the thing, though. Obviously, this is a vote with the league and Hall of Fame inductees. And when you look at this thing, should it be changed, though, where maybe you reduce it from 5 to 4 and you have maybe, say, 2 spots for Div 1, Div 2, and Div 3, have a spot for Div 4 and 5, and maybe one for whatever reason that you have it for?
I do think that necessarily some of the way the voting goes through changes because of the fact that the current inductees are all the current winners and inductees are higher division players. They tend to vote for guys they see more often,
familiar with, yeah,
who seem to be more dominant. So I think that's how a lot of the votes get skewed as well.
So what about a media vote then? We have, say, for example, yourself or Simon Dagenet or whoever it is, PZ or Terry Tam have a vote in this whole process.
I think the media vote needs to be inclusive, not necessarily more as the current inductees, but have a different flavor to the voting as well.
As Eagle's saying that there are those who started at the beginning of the FPF deserve to get in first, sure, no problem. But I think we're at a point now where the league has grown exponentially speaking here. Therefore, you need to get other lower ranked guys because you want to bring more recognition to the lower divisions.
I agree that people who have been first deserve to get in first if they're more dominant. I think that this is definitely something where skill does play a part. There's the argument of who should get in. Should it be solely higher division guys because they challenge themselves? Should it be guys who really make an impact to the division that they currently play in or have played in the past? I think Karm Police hit the nail on the head in this one. It's not a pro sport where either in the NBA or the NHL, really the best of the best. I think that because this is a rec league, I think you need to think outside the box and think of what the current player has brought to the divisions that they've played in as well.
Eagle has posed a question to us. Would you have kept the current Hall of Famer out in favor of Div 4, Div 5 player? If so, who for who? How about Ray Starr for GM Clarathris? Does that count?
The current players,
yeah.
I think of the two, if you were to sub out someone right now, the two who are lower division players who would have gotten in right now, who have been nominated, Alex Godet, Phil Cutler. I think of those two, I think Alex Godet is definitely the standout in my mind of who is someone who definitely deserves to be in based on what they have brought to the division.
He's played well. He's played very well. Phil's played very well, but albeit though Phil now is kind of tailed off a little bit here. Has not played.
Exactly. Whereas
Godet's been consistent though.
A lot of people forget, not only do they have 2 championships, but they have 3 finals appearances. They lost to the Patriots in Division D. They've managed to move up consistently. If you look at it just from a longevity point of view, Patriots are no more and Mongoose are still here. They're a team that have adapted to the divisions around them. They've taken their rough lumps, but as a whole, they've made the necessary additions and moved up. And I think that Godet is a big part of that.
I think the format will have to change at some point. There has to be some alteration to get more inclusive with other lower division guys. We have a little bit of time left here. More dangerous weapon. Liam Mahoney of Crisp or Morgan Teifel of Brothers? I don't
understand this question at all because you're comparing a receiver to a QB.
But in terms of their ability to break open a game, I mean, Liam Mahoney against Cincinnati had an awesome game. And
absolutely destructive, I believe that Liam Mahoney is. I think he's very difficult to stop. There's maybe a handful of defensive players who can stop Liam Mahoney in this division. I still think that at the end of the day, a QB's impact on a game will and always be more important than one simple receiver.
So you're saying he's a system receiver then?
No, I'm not saying he's a system receiver. I'm saying that Morgan Tadgefell of Brothers is more influential to a game than Liam Mahoney is. Because of the fact that, like you said, Terrence Morsing likes airing out the ball. Because you said that a lot of his passes go deep. It doesn't necessarily just have to go to Liam Mahoney. There are other people who can come in and take that place. Whereas if you remove Morgan Tadgefell from Brothers, you're not going to find a comparable QB.
All right, final four picks. Let's dive into this right now. We'll go to the first game. Marco in the middle versus Show Me Your TDs. 3.5 points for Marco in the middle.
I've really been disappointed on Marco in the middle in the last little while.
They lost as well.
They lost.
Yeah.
Not a game they should have lost at all. I think that Show Me Your TDs are going to take them by surprise. They have a bit of an unorthodox style of play, but it's going to be enough for Marco in the middle, who are top heavy and lack depth at the other positions as well.
2.5 Dans versus Dragons. 8.5 points for 2.5 Dans.
I think that 2.5 Dans are going to win it. I don't think it's going to be that much of a blowout. I think it's going to be a very, very close game. I think that we've been taking the Dragons a little bit too lightly because we like to joke around about Simon Dagenet, about that core as a whole. I think they're a very, very good team. The one thing, though, is that they've had absences, they've had injuries, and I think that 2.5 Dans, their style of play is going to be a little bit too difficult for them.
As Eagles pointed out, both QBs with unorthodox throwing styles. Only one has proven success with it. I believe he's referring to Joey Taylor. Backyard Bullies Brothers. 9.5 points for the Brothers.
This is one that if you would have asked me last week, I would have said I didn't agree with that completely. I would have thought the Backyard Bullies would have taken away on this one. But we're starting to see more depth from the Brothers. We're seeing a little bit
This is a big game for them, though.
This is a big game for them.
Huge
We're seeing a little bit less depth from Backyard Bullies. So I don't think that spread is going to be caught, but I do want to side with the Brothers on this one.
Finally, Game Changers Sandlot Saints. 4.5 points for the Changers.
I think it's going to be a little bit more than that. We mentioned that Game Changers are starting to find their new identity and really adapt to it. I think that as much as I love the Sandlot Saints, as much as I want to see them succeed, this season's going to be a very difficult one for them. Unless they start practicing, unless they start calling plays that really, really benefit the players that they have as a whole, I don't think that the Sandlot Saints are going to do as well against the Game Changers.
Great fan base.
Great fan base, absolutely. I would love playing for that team because I'd know that I would have uncompromising support week in, week out.
Absolutely. So finally, reminder again, starting this week, you need to have your players pretty much eligible if you're going to add a new player to your roster, if you want them to play in April or late March playoffs. Because if they don't play this weekend and they play 5 games, they're not eligible for playoffs. You need 6 to be eligible because GM is eligible for the playoffs, my friend.
Boo!
What did you learn on today's episode?
I learned that we can compare players or we can label players on something different than they actually are, and it makes good radio.
Marc-Antoine Vienna sent me a tweet afterwards. Still upset that I did not include Fred. Mark, I'm sorry, man. He is a great quarterback.
On that note, Eagle just typed, he learned that Mocon can pick 4 QBs that are actually the best.
We never asked for Eagles. What did you learn today on the episode?
Ask me then.
Well, we'll ask you next week. How about that? Next week, we'll have our new theme music for this no-name podcast called
Nation of Domination.
Thank you. GM, thank you very much, as always.
Always a pleasure.
Eagle, Terry, thank you very much. Come up next, it is You'll Never Walk Alone with Terry Tam, yours truly, here at the beautiful, beautiful coast-to-coast studios in north central eastern Laval. Good morning, South Korea.